Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by 5 excellent CX analysts to discuss all the latest news from across the customer experience space. Yes, today I'm delighted to be joined by three analysts almost becoming our regulars here on the CX news show. They are Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, Rebecca Wettemann, Principal at Valoir, and Michael Fauscette, Founder, CEO, and Chief Analyst at Arion Research. And also backed by popular demand, we have Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst at V3B, and Martin Schneider, Head of Research at Annuitas Research. It's great to have you all join us. Now let's get straight into the news. And I'm going to start off by talking everything Zoom. They moved into the workforce management space a couple of weeks ago to bolster their credentials as a CCaaS provider. I don't know if anybody wants to share their thoughts on that move.
The thing that I think is really interesting about it, whether you're looking at it as a contact center, support center, anything that you would kind of, let's call it legacy, add workforce management to, the great thing about it is that they've got data points that are almost already there, right? Whereas the bolt-ons, even the ones that are inside contact center suites, don't think about the actual the usage, the interaction. They're not capturing text and other things that can actually feed, when you put it into the AI, right, some really interesting insights, because it's not just about staffing from a timing and spike perspective. It's skills matching, right? So that's why I said, where do you want to bring that workforce management even outside of contact center to think of? They're going to be competing more with Gong in that regard, of when it's sales workforce management, right? So that side of things. So there's an interesting element of adding that layer of finding insights into both when, where, how, why, all those types of questions of the interactions that employees are having with customers. So it's really kind of exciting to see how you can just deliver that insight layer because you've got that information. Right. And that's the really, the other tools were absolutely, I wouldn't call them arbitrary, but they were, they were configured and they were based on ideas, and you could get some data insights to them, but they weren't self-learning. They weren't, so it's really interesting the amount of kind of preset data just by design that can actually iterate and self-learn on it. So that's what I think is the most exciting about it. Both
if they do it though. I mean, that's the challenge with Zoom, right? Is that Zoom has been a partner to all, right? And now they're going to, or are they going to contract and be a partner to none? They're going to still be a partner to everyone. I think that from a Zoom perspective, I'm still looking at I see a strategy. I think I see a strategy. I think I look at it and I'm like, okay, we're bringing all this together. Like Martin, like you said, we're bringing all of these capabilities into potentially lots of different functional markets. But the problem is the rest of the business world is trying to collapse the walls, right? Trying to not bring, I'm going to bring a function into this market. I'm going to bring a function to that market, which is where Zoom seems to be going. So some of it feels like an odd, a leap over things. It's still very much like a tools company that's bringing a lot of tools together, trying to make a platform. It's still almost like revenge buying after 5.9. So I'm still a little bit confused about where we're heading with this. But what I see is really important is I think the next 6 months of how Zoom communicates how to implement that data correctly and what then becomes in the world of possible. Because for the vast majority of business users, Zoom is still that thing you get on because you have to have a business meeting. It's not necessarily thought of as a mission critical platform. Go up and say to someone, okay, you can't use Zoom anymore. They're going to say, great, I'm going to go find another commodity. Go say you can't use Teams. Go say you can't use Slack. Go say you can't use any other foundational platform. They're going to be like, yeah, pry that revenue out of my cold dead hands. So I'm still waiting for that glue, that cinch up, right? That pulls everything together.
Yeah, but I don't think. I mean, they certainly from a strategy. If you think about what they've done all along, I mean, once they built one product, they've just started adding module to build a bigger footprint, right? So, I mean, I think this is interesting. Obviously, we want to see kind of how it plays out. I really do like from the functional application of AI though, and machine learning. I think that's really interesting. And you think about that. I mean, if it can really help me, especially in that intraday sort of approach of moving incidents around to the right place at the right time, that's really exciting. And frankly, there's all sorts of applications of that. I mean, what about project management? Wouldn't that be an interesting add-in to my project management tool, for example? I mean, that's always a problem, right? Yeah, and it's been talked about in the project management world for a long time, of that whole skills matching thing. So this is, I'm interested to actually take a look at this and see kind of how it plays out, and what's coming next. I mean, you could see like quality management, for example, looks like it might be on the roadmap, because if you look at the screenshots, it's like, that looks like quality on that sidebar. So I mean, that would be a logical next one, right? So
my question, maybe that I don't know, and I meant to dive a little bit into this last night as I was kind of preparing for this, but I don't know the answer. Does anybody here know what kind of inroads Zoom has made in the contact center market? I mean, what kind of market share do they have there? Does anybody know that?
No idea.
Right. Like the fact that we all cover contact center.
And we don't know.
We all had conversations, and we're deep in with so many contact center leaders. We're deep in with so many vendors. And I'll be honest, like people worry more about AWS, right? How is AWS going to suck all that in because they have the capacity? But I mean, Shelly, to your point, like, are we really hearing people be like, oh my God. Like,
oh my God, I can't live without my contact manager, my contact center powered by Zoom. So I do want to say one thing on the record while we're having this conversation. We talked about this, Charlie, before you got here. The fact that Liz Miller, who has more knowledge and expertise about all things contact center, CX, everything else, is not covering the Zoom event that's happening right now and wasn't invited to do that is freaking ridiculous. But anyway,
I'm hiding.
But anyway, so I do think there's exciting functionality. I hadn't thought about what you were talking about, Michael, in terms of project management. Oh my God, that could be so cool. But my bigger question is that, I see this from so many of these vendors. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's add this. Let's add this. And I just wonder, I feel like in so many instances, we see this from Zoom. I think Zoho is another one that we see this from. We want to do everything for everybody, and we want people to get into our platform and never leave. We want them to have Zmail. We want them to have this. We want them to do all their chatting. We want them to do this. We want them to never leave. Well, I don't work like that. I'm inside of Teams. I'm inside of Zoom. I'm inside of WebEx. I'm inside of Slack. And I don't want to put all of, I don't want to do that. So I feel like, this is an interesting solution. It will be great to see what kind of traction they get. I'm sure, as I said, the Zoom Perspectives event is happening right now. It'll be interesting to go back and, see what kind of information they've shared. I haven't, I was supposed to be there in person. I haven't attended online, but I am going to go back and see, the recordings and see how they talk about this. But the reality of it is, how many people are using this thing, and how do we get people's attention? When people see a product that has a certain use case, and for most people, Zoom is, hey, Liz, let's jump on Zoom.
Right.
I mean, I
got married on Zoom. Can we just say that out loud? Like, I got married on Zoom. I'm not thinking of it as a workforce management tool. I just don't, I'm not.
So I think that's the biggest challenge there, is that, and by the way, there are so many other workforce management tools out there that people are already SAP solutions and things like that. And so I do think there's a lot of interesting functionality here. I wonder, one, what kind of traction Zoom already has in the contact center realm, and how this is going to propel that forward. And I do feel like the biggest challenge is really from a marketing messaging standpoint. How do we get people's attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, are they entering the market late for workforce management, or are they moving beyond a tools vendor to somebody that has a new solution for what the experience of the future looks like? And I think that's, they've been signaling that they're getting into the contact center market for a long time. But as we've all said, we don't see them there.
Yeah.
So this is either a late entrant and maybe some interesting AI to a very crowded market, or something that has a lot of potential we'll have to see where it ends up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think lots of really great perspectives on the Zoom there. It's going to be fascinating to watch their contact center journey. And just maybe moving on now. I mean, we've talked about AI a lot, and it's a topic that always comes up now. Perhaps
is it a thing still?
Yeah.
What is this that we're talking about? AI.
But yeah, everything seems to be AI led, and one of those innovations is Copilot, obviously taking the generative AI wave by storm, perhaps the defining innovation of this new generative AI era. And we've kind of I think 2 weeks ago now, they launched Sales Copilot, and I don't know if anybody kind of had any thoughts on that launch and maybe its significance within the kind of customer experience space.
So I think Sales Copilot is very interesting in the way they're bringing the capabilities into the application, right? That's where it's got to be with AI. For Microsoft, it's even more interesting because they already have Viva Sales, and they have, if they want, access to everything the salesperson is doing on their desktop. That's really, really interesting, but it also makes it critically important for them to help customers and individual end users understand what are they doing with the data? Where are those guardrails? Where is the sort of wall between public and private data? And how much does the user have control over what they're doing and how it's being shared?
This is also a simplification, right? So I think that's the big thing to look at when it comes to Microsoft, right? I think, and Rebecca just pointed it out, right? Like, okay, is it Copilot? Are we looking at Viva Sales? But there was that kind of time period when they really got excited about AI. Even before the open AI, before that, think last year, Viva Sales came out and it was a really popular, it is very well loved by sellers because it is actually really highly relevant. It doesn't take you out of the environment. To Shelly's point from earlier with Zoom, it does not take you out of the environment where a seller wants to work. Being Outlook, right? It's not saying you have to go into CRM to go do it. Yeah. So, but then they had this thing called Viva Sales, and then all of a sudden now there's this thing called Copilot. So it's really going to be thought of as one entity now, right? Yeah. Where it can appear where the seller wants to be, and that seller doesn't have to be in sales. And I think that's a really important point because we're seeing a lot of vendors follow that pattern because that's how businesses are looking. Mm-hmm. If that seller happens to need that sales insight from Sales Copilot and they sit in the contact center, well, guess what? Now they're going to be able to get those insights in the panel in which they work. So, to Rebecca's point, it brings all of this together. I think the really interesting part about Copilot is that even though they're introducing all of these individual entities, it's like a sales copilot, marketing copilot, they're very focused on the most important of the mundane tasks that need to be automated and need to have intelligence brought into them, right? So whether it is the creation of that follow-up email that happens every single time that marketing is like, I don't want to do this. If it is the seller saying, okay, where is this new audience? If it has more to do with the data on the back end, if you are a dynamics-driven house, if you're not using one of these co-pilots, you really have to go and ask someone some serious questions.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about AI and how it's applied, I think this is a great example of the two big cases, right? So there's certain things that you want to automate off the plate of your workforce because you want them to do something higher value, whatever that may be. So automating clerical tasks, mundane tasks, whatever you want to call them, I think is important. And then there's the assist part of it, which I think is also equally valuable in this case, particularly to salespeople, because we haven't done a very good job in the past with sales tools, right? Most of them were for managers and not for salespeople. Yep. It's like Salesforce automation never automated any Salesforce, right? It's just it's a flogging tool.
No carrot on stick.
Yeah, and so the idea that you can give me an assistant that can help me schedule meetings, get a background of somebody I'm going to meet with, or tell me some events in this company that are important so I can make a contact with them or whatever. I mean, those kinds of applications, that's high value, and I do like the direction they're going. And I will tell you, I just took literally this morning, finished an AI survey that came out of the field, and I just took a quick look before this because I was curious. One of the questions I asked was about, spending over the next 12 months, both for AI and for generative AI. For AI, 89% of the respondents said they were going to increase their spending on AI. And for generative AI, it was 86% of the respondents. So
that's not
there's money
surprising
here.
at all.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the question is are they going to be spending on the tools that have it, or how to get it up off the ground? Because that tends to be the biggest problem, right? That's where I'm hearing most of the fall down and most of the walk away. And I think that's where something like a Viva Sales and a Copilot, because again, it's an outlook. Like it's whenever it's already there, right? So for those people,
the number one challenge, they said in the survey, number one was hiring talented people with experience with AI, and number two was hiring partners with experienced people with AI. So, I mean, that's going to be the limiter for a lot of companies that try to do this, is where do they go to get skills, right?
Yeah, but the embedded nature of it is really big, I think. And I think that's really important. I was thinking, and I was like, well, what is it? I was trying to think of like a cute thing of like the 3 Ps of, like AI. It's like personalization, it's got that, productivity, it's going to make the sales guys better. And I was like, what's the other P? I'm like, probably not going to work because the data's bad in the CRM. So like the sales side will actually having it actually branded sales maybe not be a great idea.
Problematic.
That's a good one. That's the gift for today.
Awesome. One thing to note though, when we're talking about this, is that it is a Microsoft tool, but it can be added to other CRMs like Salesforce, and I think that's an interesting part of this equation too, and that's what makes it.
When you put the ability for it to use Outlook and CRM,
it's where your salespeople are living, right? Those two places. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's a really key point.
Sugar CRM, our most popular use tool, probably in addition to like the actual core database, was what we call our Outlook plugin, because nobody wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Like if you actually like monitored, if like you put like a Pendo against things, the sales guys wanted to use it in Outlook. They didn't want to.
Oh, absolutely. But
that's always been kind of Microsoft's thing, right? They always have so many cool. They always have the puzzle pieces, and they just never put them together. Interestingly, I don't know if this is how they figure it out. Like, is this going to be the final thing? Because you can just lay AI over anything, and prompt based and other stuff. Like the UX is so simple, right? Did they finally figure out like CRM dominance because it's just a series of prompts? Like there's no actual app, right? I don't know.
But I think that you can't just look at it from a CRM layer, right? And I think that's Microsoft. That's Microsoft's thing, but that's also Oracle's thing. That's also
for sure.
Largely we would agree AWS's thing, right? Is because all of this points to Azure. Right. So as we start to look at all of this, and we're looking at all of the selling data, we're looking at how AI is going to work. You want to see the best Copilot implementation, the best Viva Sales implementation. You're going to go look at that organization that has everything integrated, nice and fresh up on Azure, where you've got all of that data that's flowing through. You are looking at everything from your CRM to your CDP to all of that data that's working
all
through
right there.
Your stack. I mean, exactly. Like that's the point. The people who are going to win at AI are unfortunately the people who have taken that leap into that public cloud, right? Because that's where you can have that level of compute. That's where you can have those massive stores of data. Yeah. If you're simply looking at this as like, what plugin can I put in? Well, then let's go back to the SFA. Let's go back to all those little micro solutions of, sales enablement, sales performance management,
sales acceleration.
Right. Like the sales stack looks as ridiculous as the MarTech stack. Like that's not a good place to be, right? That is not a good place to be if you are a seller in high growth mode. And I think that's where a lot of folks are. I think the interesting connection here between even the Microsoft conversation and the Zoom conversation is the pricing conversation, right? So Charlie, well done on topics, because when it comes to the pricing, when you start to look at all of these, like, is Zoom going to price itself into be an SMB tool? Like, hey, we're going to be the SMB, like we are going to go up against Zoho because we're going to be the Z's and we're going to battle it out. And we're going to be the tools and we're going to look at that money. Or are they going to look at that mid-market and be like, hey, you could be a fast mover if you're in Azure, you're maybe a mid-sized enterprise. Or are they going to be with someone like Salesforce who kind of woke up and was like, we no longer have an easy to use SMB tool.
Well, and we're really expensive.
Yep. Right. And we're really expensive. So.
And we're really, and speaking of, one of the things I noticed is that you can, so pricing for this is set right now at $30 per user per month.
That's Sales Copilot?
Yeah.
Sales Copilot.
Yeah. That's not bad.
And by the way, we're talking about this as if it's in wide use. Well, Copilot is really only being used right now. It's only available to about 600 enterprise customers globally. So we're talking about a small pool.
Is the prerequisite that you're on Azure, that you're running your Dynamics on Azure?
No.
I don't know, Liz. Do you know that?
No, you can be on Salesforce. So you can be a Salesforce implementation.
My question about this is $30 per user per month. Oh, sure, you can add it to your Salesforce CRM. So now what am I paying?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, does that even make sense? Is that even feasible? So I would like to see how that works more.
I think, and it's the 365 route, right? It's like you're adding it to your Outlook. It's like they're not gonna, the way they're not going to think about it is and I think a lot of the conversations are around, does this give you more firepower if you are a Salesforce customer? And you know that all of your people work on Outlook.
If you're a Salesforce, if you're a Salesforce customer on Unlimited edition right now, there's no reason, right? Because it's in all the Einstein GPTs included.
Yes, it's included.
So I mean, and you look at the pricing, $50 per user per month. That sounds really expensive, but if it's in Unlimited already, then although that's not the only part of the price, right? There is the additional credit piece.
Right.
That's where,
that's where it gets expensive.
Lots of additional punctuation around that.
No, that's fair.
But you needed to be doing one of these.
Well, and I mean, I wrote a thing about their overall price increase a few weeks ago, and I mean that the 9% sounds good, but if you start to dig into it, it varies quite a bit by.
But to be fair, and not to give Salesforce a pass here, because they do own we are super expensive brand identity, right? But the reality of it is that they did a 9% price increase across Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Industries, Tableau, but that's the first price increase in 7 years. Like that's a pretty long time, so
they're not even beating inflation.
So I get that.
Yeah, lots of really great stuff there. And I do want to talk a little bit more about Salesforce. We've already discussed kind of the 9% pay rise on existing products, but they've also just released kind of the Salesforce AI Cloud, which houses all of their GPT solutions. And that comes with a price tag of $360,000 just for the starter pack. And then there's kind of the individual service and Sales Cloud GPT solutions, which I believe cost kind of $50 per month per user. Did any of those kind of announcements around the prices take you by surprise?
Didn't surprise me at all. I think, to Mike's point, that it's in Unlimited already means for Unlimited customers, yes, they're going to have to think about what those other fees look like or credits look like, but it's rolled into it. And I think, too, you have to remember, it's not that long ago when they came out with Wave, and Wave's pricing was crazy and everybody went, oh my God. And I think we're going to continue to see the reality is whatever, and this is just not for Salesforce, but for all vendors, whatever they're telling us the pricing is, that's a negotiation. So for every vendor, for every CRM, they're putting a target price, but it can come down to what it is in the quarter and who the rep is, and how strategic the account is. So when we look at these pricing numbers, I think we have to always take them with a grain of salt. I think the important thing for customers to think about is what is the unpredictable part of this pricing piece, because it's not the $50 a user a month that I would be concerned about.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also, your use is going to impact your pricing as well, because they've set this up so that there's a credits option that if you exceed the amount of queries that you get, you can purchase those. They have not disclosed pricing on that. So that's another, wrinkle in there that needs to be taken into consideration.
That could get pretty crazy as you expose some of the AI to your customers out on your portals and things. That's when the credit stuff could be a boon.
You could easily overrun that one fast. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but there's also an underlying existing challenge here, right? Which is all of this is happening. AI is booming. We have these, there's these buy consumption numbers. There's all this happening. And I think we all agree, like, this is kind of every vendor is going through this. Everyone is going through this. Like, none of this is really a surprise. But there was something that started happening about 2 years ago. And that was the renewal on a lot of 5-year, 7-year wonky deal contracts with Salesforce. And people started, I don't know if you guys felt that. I had plenty of people coming to me. I think that's probably one of the top renegotiations that we've been doing are Salesforce contracts, right? Because people looked at it and they were like, wait, I'm locked into these mandatory increases every single year. I'm not hitting them. No one wants to talk to me about, hey, I'm not hitting these. Can we do something about it? It's almost like this, we don't hear you that you're not using it. And again, is every vendor going through this? Yes. But I hadn't seen, I hadn't seen how loud it was getting for anyone else other than Salesforce. I mean, there was a lot of grousing. There was a lot of frustration there because there were all these new pricing models that were hitting. And yes, it is super easy to scale on Salesforce. I think that is a universal, everyone's like, if I want to move my business fast, it is so easy to scale on Salesforce. And then all of a sudden you wake up and the CFO's in your doorway, like, what did we just do on Salesforce? Because all the invoices started coming in. And I think that there was, unfortunately for Salesforce, you had the issue of lots of renegotiations and lots of grousing and lots of kind of angsty negative feelings at the same time when you're coming out with new packages that, when you look at them, I mean, Martin, you're right. It's not like these were huge, wild increases. Shelly, to your point, it's not like they came out and it was like 50% increase of the contract. But it was an increase enough that it got people to go back and look at their contracts. And I think that's the thing that Salesforce is going to have to really watch out for in the next 6 months, which is all these new pricing models, plus all of the stories of all of their peers. I mean, these guys are getting together. These women are getting together and saying, hey, anyone else feel like their Salesforce bill's gotten out of control over the last couple of years?
And there's a resounding yes.
There's a common conversation there. So when you have all of those things happen while you're looking at a pricing increase and you're looking at something that could get out of control quickly if you don't have an actual AI strategy, there is kind of this brewing perfect storm for Salesforce that I hope they have their eyes on, because it's going to hit probably within the next, I would say maybe 12 to 18 months.
Right.
Yeah.
It could get ugly.
Well, and I wonder about the implications of this sort of layer cake model they've used for pricing for years, right? I mean, every time you add a new module, I've added a new thing, and I don't think about it over time because it's spread across all these different parts of my organization. And then all of a sudden I look at a consolidated bill and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Right? Because it comes in, each layer is fairly thin, but you put a whole bunch of layers there and it gets pretty expensive pretty fast.
For sure. But to take it away, just try to look at it just for AI Cloud as AI Cloud. It's interesting that they do they're keeping the user pricing.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that's because they finally have an easy thing to say, like, look, go back to my dumb 3 Ps, but it's like productivity and personal, the things that you can do with this.
Yeah.
Are, at $50 a month. I mean, if you save somebody 20 minutes a day, the thing pays for itself ridiculously. Like, they finally have something that they can say, there's productivity gains that like make this a no-brainer at $50 for the person using it.
Well, and I think this is a way to your point, Martin, this is a way to get use cases happening, right? And I think but I think the bigger thing here, and you touched on it, Liz, has nothing to do with what Salesforce is offering and what Microsoft is offering and what anybody else is offering. It's what's my AI strategy?
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is, what I believe, what I see is people don't have any idea.
Yep.
And you know what? This is so new. The reality of it is, you're an AI strategist and you're an AI, you know what I'm saying? Like, that hasn't happened yet.
I'm trying to build a maturity model for AI, and it's like everybody's in phase 1. Like, I don't even know what 2, 3, and 4 look like.
So this is a bigger problem. It's like, what the hell do I do is the question that everybody's asking. But again, going back to your point, Martin, when we're at these early stages and we're trying to figure it out, being able to do it, being able to take your early adopters within the organization and say, here, Liz, we're going to pay $50 a month. You try this. Come back and tell us what,
it's a
what you're
seeding
seeing.
Strategy for sure. Yeah. And it's a good idea. I mean, look, the use cases have to come out. They need to work with people. They need to get their, whatever they used to call them, they're like
trailblazers.
The trailblazers. But then they also had like their own guys. They weren't like it sounded like lightning, but it was like they're little like internal Accenture guys, right? The accelerator guys that would help, the big the big consulting guys inside, and get those on some of those bigger projects so they can learn.
One advantage though that Salesforce has over some of the other guys that have more recently gotten into AI is they have a lot of customers using Einstein.
Yes.
It may not be GPT, but there are customers that have already dealt with how do we think about confirmation bias? How do we think about the data? There are an awful lot of customers that are prime targets for this next gen of stuff that have already gotten benefits and understand the risks of AI, at least in the previous Einstein.
But I think it's important too to think about the fact that there is a talent shortage, right? And a lot of customers are going to struggle. We need to build a strategy, but we also need expertise to do it. And if you're a provider that's providing one of these solutions, you better make sure you can get it implemented for your customers and get them up and productive, or it's just not going to work.
The VAR channel is not as equipped.
It's complicated as hell, right? And you have to bring somebody in to help you, right? I mean, we just finished doing this. So you have to bring somebody in to help you. I think the same thing is going to happen with AI strategic consulting. And either the vendor has to offer this, or we'll see this whole new, realm of consultants pop up. We already are to a certain extent, but this is something that most companies are going to need help thinking about implementing, because if you don't, it's going to be really easy to throw a boatload of money at this and not really have any idea where you are, what's happening, what kind of ROI are we getting for this. It could be an easy way to waste time and money. And I think that that's something that nobody wants to do.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of good quotes here for articles on CX today. I've got Liz saying it's going to get ugly. I've got you, Shelly, saying that it's confusing as hell, but lots of really great insights.
Listen, metaverse consultants got to go somewhere.
Exactly. But I think that's a really great place to end today's conversation. It's been lots of really great kind of insights coming from everywhere in this conversation, but lots for our viewers at CX today to appreciate. So thank you everyone for joining me, and also thank you to everybody for watching. Bye for now.